It's the first week of July 2025. I'm Dave. I'm here with Andrew, and you're listening to BV Weekly. This week, ahead of 4th of July weekend, we discuss our favorite albums from the first 6 months of the year. Andrew, welcome to our 5th episode.
Thank you, Dave. What's going on? How was your week?
We've made it. Oh, I just wanted to say we made it over a month. And if you downloaded this the day it came out, yes, this came out earlier than usual. We're usually releasing first early Friday morning, but because of the holiday weekend, we wanted to just get this one done and out. But about my week, it was good. It's been hot. Spent the day at Coney Island. Saw Bao do his Q&A about the We Are the World documentary in Prospect Park, which was cool, and watch the movie and hung. So that was fun. What about you?
Nice. What did you do in Coney Island?
Like nothing music related, beach, food, boardwalk, a bike there. So that was fun.
Did you ride the Cyclone?
I have ridden the Cyclone, but I did not ride the Cyclone this time.
And no vegan hot dogs from Nathan's, right?
No.
I don't think that's a real thing.
No, it's not a real thing. Yeah, the Nathan's menu is not very vegan friendly at all.
I do like those crinkle fries though.
Yeah, I definitely used to indulge in the fries. These days, trying to be a little healthier, but they are good. I agree.
My week, I went to go see Joshua Ray Walker at Honky Tonkin' in Queens, which is this really cool country party that happens in Ridgewood, Queens, which is the neighborhood I live in, at Gotchier Hall. It's like this old sort of like event hall. And it's cool. It's like, you wouldn't expect something like this, I don't think, in Queens, especially in Ridgewood, Queens, but it's like this honky tonk, and I think there's two hosts, but one of them who I remember because he's very noticeable is DJ Moonshine. He's a very long beard, and it's just like this straight up taste of Nashville in the middle of Ridgewood, Queens, and they book 2 bands a night to play, as well as I think it's all vinyl DJing, and they always have great acts. And Joshua Ray Walker is like one of the best current country singers going. I think he just released his new album Tropicana, so it was also playing a lot from that. And he said on stage, so Joshua recently beat cancer, which is obviously amazing, and it was so great to see him touring again. And he said on stage, he's like, beach country is not necessarily something that he's ever done before or been known for, but when he was undergoing chemo, he was like, all I wanted was to be on a beach. I just wanted to see palm trees. And so he started writing this beach country record. It's like he wears a Hawaiian shirt on the cover. There's a parrot. Like, it's not like Jimmy Buffett, but it's very cool. And it's really, really good songs. If you listen to one song from that record, Keys to the Tacoma is a banger. It's been on repeat for me ever since the show. And, yeah, he was awesome. I've seen him before. He always puts on an amazing show. His pedal steel player is a beast. So really fun to get to go see him literally around the corner from my apartment at this super crazy cool country party that is just, even though it's been happening for a couple of years, I'm still kind of like, I can't believe this happens in Queens. It's you kind of have to go in order to see the site that is Honky Tonkin' in Queens.
Yeah, it seems amazing. I still haven't made it there. I definitely want to one day.
You definitely should. And they always have amazing acts. Like I saw Sacher and the Disarmers at one. Man, who else? I think I saw Bella White at one. Like it's always a lot of the country stuff that we write about on BV. Like their booking is pretty in line with our taste in country, I guess.
Right, which seems so under the radar in the scheme of things.
Yeah, it's very like it's not alt country, but it's like alternative friendly country, I guess. Like it's like real country, but not like, it's not like I guess it's not like, bro country, so to speak, or whatever.
Right. Well, I even just mean this phenomenon of like bands that we like playing at this venue that people probably don't even realize exists. It's just
Yeah, except they sell out like every time.
No, and I
Yes,
feel like
but
that speaks to the built-in audience that they have, which
right.
is almost independent of people who are like, I wonder who's playing an indie rock show tonight at Mercury Lounge or Bowery Ballroom.
Definitely. And I mean, the last time I saw Joshua Ray Walker was at Brooklyn Made, which is more that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. It's like, it definitely feels like it falls outside of our usual kind of like what's going on in New York City. Like, I don't even want to say like indie rock centric, but you know, like what you're saying, like the sort of Bowery Presents, like, and like, or St. Vitus or TVI, like this is the kind of stuff that's in our, like we're always tapped into as historically with BV. But this feels like a little bit on the fringe of that. And yet, like you said, yeah, there's this total built-in audience of people who are just like, oh, like I want to go two-step and line dance on. There's actually this amazing sign on the dance floor. It's like dancing encouraged, like please like two-step and line dance. Do not stand still on the dance floor. And that's also like, I should mention this, like that's what makes it so different is because when I saw the exact same artist at Brooklyn Made, it was a little bit more like a rock show in Brooklyn where people are kind of like standing around a little bit, like all kind of watching the artist. Whereas at Honky Tonkin' in Queens, it's like these artists are putting on a show. Absolutely. It's a full hour-long concert, like full regular set, but people are dancing like it's a honky tonk, and you're just not going to see that like break out at a Bowery Ballroom show. At least I've been to country shows at Bowery Ballroom, and that has not happened. So it does feel, and you see the artists like on stage, they're like, this is crazy that this is happening in New York. Like they don't expect it, you know, until they get there and they play and they see that it really happens.
No, totally. That's amazing. Definitely have to make it there.
Yeah, it's a really cool event. And, you know, like I said, I'm in Ridgewood. You're always invited, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's June just ended.
Yeah.
That means we're halfway through the year.
Yes.
Officially, not like the fake halfway through the year.
Ooh, shots fired.
But no, yeah. So what I'm referring to is it's time for our mid-year list, our best albums of 2025 so far, which we did put up on the website. You can go check that out at brooklynvegan.com. That's, you know, with contributions from our whole team. But today on the podcast, we want to kind of go deeper into some of the albums that we personally love the most, as well as honorable mentions that didn't even make the list. And we're going to do that by going through it kind of genre by genre, because like all of Brooklyn Vegan coverage, our mid-year list covers a lot of genres, you know, some more deeply than others, which is kind of representative of what Brooklyn Vegan is. It's the interests, the many genres and various levels of interest in those genres collectively across our team on a website and other media channels. So yeah, we'll dive into Andrew and I's favorites, starting with like Indian alternative rock.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. So for me, my favorite indie rock album this year is Great Grandpa's Patience Moonbeam. It's in my top 3 of the year so far, all genres. I think that it's such like so if you've been following Great Grandpa's career, like each album has been pretty noticeably different and a pretty sort of noticeable step forward. This one's their first in 6 years. They didn't really go on hiatus, but like, you know, like a lot of bands, like when COVID kind of happened, they just kind of like pulled away a bit. And so it's been twice as long or more in between the second and third record as it was between the first and second. And it's like, if the second record is a step up from the first, then this is really like 2 steps up from the second. And I do think that does have to do with how much time they spent on it. It's just like, there are parts of it that are like Radiohead, like art rock, crazy, lots of stuff going on. And then there's also just like way more simple, down to earth, like kind of folky, like just guitar centric indie rock. It has like so many good hooks. I love like it's not even like, I love the lyrics, but like not even like it's not even that the messages necessarily are something that I think deeply about. It's just like, I think the way they sing the words on the record, it just like, it really resonates and sticks. And it's like, there's just this emotional impact in these sort of open-ended phrases that could mean a lot of different things depending on how you look at them. And they just drill their way into my head, and I think it's so good. And kind of on a similar note, like I guess like just that record has this sort of like it's indie rock. It's very much rooted in like the DIY scene. There's kind of like some punk ethos, even if they aren't really a punk band. And just like I said, this kind of folkiness, this kind of earthiness, and that in general has been something that's kind of been happening this year. And two other big ones for me is Friendship's Caveman Wakes Up and Flory's Sounds Like, which are also just kind of like that same like DIY punk ethos and kind of an earthy, folky vibe. Flory is like straight up like a kind of an alt country record, but very much in an indie way. It kind of like, I think my quick elevator pitch for that Flory record is like, it sounds like the Grateful Dead and Neil Young and Crazy Horse at like their sloppiest, and I mean that in the most endearing way. And also recommended if you like MJ Lenderman, who they've toured with. And then also speaking of Friendship, there's a lot of direct ties between that band and MJ Lenderman and Wednesday too, and including this album was some of it was written on like MJ's guitar. And there, some people call them alt country too, although to me they don't really strike me as super country. But it's this really sort of somber, subtle record that kind of creeps up on you. And like I'll notice that like if you put it on in the background, I think it might not like jump out at you. Like it might kind of just like fade into the background, but then I'll notice like I'll have it on and a song will just pop out and I'll be like, oh, this like, I'm so obsessed with like this guitar melody. Like I can't stop humming it. So those three are kind of like in that kind of particular realm for me.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of that Friendship record. And, you know, like you're saying with Great Grandpa, an album that's indie rock, but also other genres. And we talked a lot about it last week, but Greet Death, I know it's a recent release, but it shot up there. One of my favorite indie rock records of the first half of 2025 for sure. And I don't think we should talk about that one anymore. Definitely go listen last week. But
yeah, listen last week. But if as like it's shoegaze and also so much else. I guess that's the most I'll say. But listen, we review the whole record last week.
Other big indie rock albums that we love, Sharon Van Etten.
Yeah, the Sharon Van Etten record is really cool. It's like her first record with a backing band called The Attachment Theory, and she's really presenting it as a band, like not a solo record. And it was written and recorded collaboratively and produced collaboratively. And it is like Sharon leaning into like her love of 80s post-punk, and there's some like industrial and stuff like that. And it's just like really just like Sharon in a rock band, which is super cool. And speaking of industrial, the Model Actress record Pirouette is like amazing. It's like a rave punk industrial indie melting pot. And I also think I loved their debut album Dog's Body, and I feel like this one is a step up. So that's another huge favorite for me. Not to mention, I mean, I think we touched on this in the past, but like the returns of Pulp and Stereolab is, I think you can't talk about indie alternative rock this year and not mention that.
Both great albums. And the indie folk kind of pop leaning direction. The Samia album of this year is also one I really love. And I feel like we need to mention that Panda Bear album as another album on our list in the indie rock realm that is really great.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear Panda Bear all these years later, just like with such a obviously great record. I mean, we talked on the episode where we mourned the loss of Brian Wilson about his massive influence on Panda Bear and Animal Collective. And I think this record is like a lot of other Panda Bear, like so Beach Boysy. But it's just like if there's one record this year that's really scratching the Beach Boys itch, it would be this one. And yeah, it's great. Panda Bear. Cindy Lee is on the record, which is really cool because that Cindy Lee record from last year was such a dominant force last year.
We've also got a bunch of, I said Samia was leaning folk, other folk albums in the indie rock realm that we love this year. The Anastasia album, which I did shout out a few weeks ago. The Florist album is a big favorite for us. as well as the Hannah Cohen album.
Yeah, I personally love the Florist record Jelly Wish, which I also might say like, works really nicely on a playlist with Great Grandpa Flory and Friendship. Yeah, it's just like, it's sort of like this really just gentle indie folk album with sort of a surrealist kind of angle. And look at the artwork. If the artwork entices you, then the record will entice you. Before, I think a couple other shout outs would be, we love the Perfume Genius and Bon Iver records, as we always love them.
Just reliably great.
Yeah. Personally, I love Adult Mom's new album, Natural Causes, which I also think works really well on a playlist with those other records I was talking about. And I guess we have to shout out Cameron Winter's record, which was really a December release. But
I just want to say I definitely ignored it in December. In January, I thought, I don't think this is for me. It's fine. It's last year anyway. Let's move on. Since then, I keep hearing about it. I keep revisiting it, and now I'm hooked as well. So that Cameron Winter album, which does appear on some people's 2025 lists due to the December thing. So yeah, we did need to mention that one.
And Cameron's the singer of Geese.
Not to be confused with Goose.
Right. Not Goose, the jam band, compared to Geese, who like was a Strokesy band and then kind of like became a little bit of a jam band.
It's especially confusing because they're both like really rising and have a lot of hype in 2024 and 2025. Goose, who just headlined Madison Square Garden for the first time days ago.
And Geese just announced a big tour too.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah. And with Cameron's solo record, which I would say is not really anything like Geese.
He's bigger than Geese, I think. He announced this Carnegie Hall show after selling out like 5 or 6 New York City shows that kept getting progressively bigger over the past year. He went from like 1 Joe's Pub show to 2 Joe's Pub show to like 3 Joe's Pub show to 2 shows in a big church that both sold out instantly to Carnegie Hall. And this has all happened in like the course of less than a year or something. So yeah, no, Cameron Winter's been getting big, whereas I feel like Geese also have been getting more big, more critically acclaimed. And yeah, now they're up to Brooklyn Paramount, which is also nearly 3,000 cap. Collectively, Cameron is having a very big year.
It's crazy that this is happening to 2 of his projects at once.
It's especially crazy for us based on what we thought of Geese on that first album.
Yeah, definitely. Like I would say if you didn't like Geese, you could still like the Cameron Winter record.
And if you didn't like Geese's first album, you could still like Geese's second album.
Yeah, that too. They are
an evolving artist.
Now, within our favorite indie and alternative rock records of the year, we kind of have a little subcategory of the best 90s rock record of 2025, which I think could either be Mama's Welcome to Blue Sky, Blonde Shells, If You Asked for a Picture, Alien Boys, You Wanna Fade, Hotline TNT's Raspberry Moon, or Super Heaven's self-titled album. They're all kind of like records that sound like something you could hear, that you could pick up for like $4.99 as a used CD in 2002 that had come out 5 years earlier, and that's a compliment.
Yeah, they all work well together. You're talking about playlists. It's just been a great year for these kind of 90s indie rock bands to fill your 6 CD disc changer. So it's they're all good. I've been leaning Mama lately, but then I also love Blonde Shell, like an Alien Boy. Super Heaven is great.
I definitely really like the Super Heaven record, which is their first in 10 years. And like, I mean, it comes after they have gotten way more popular than they were when they last were a consistent touring band. And I think they really meet the moment. Like, I think, I'm not going to say it's their best record, but I think it could be. It wouldn't be crazy to suggest. We also, there's, as far as these little mini like subset trends go, if we had to award the best many-membered UK art rock album of 2025, it would probably either be Caroline's Caroline 2 or Black Country New Roads' Forever How Long, both of which are follow-up albums that I don't think the last one would have predicted what these new ones sound like, and for entirely different reasons. Black Country New Road have a different vocalist, and Caroline, just that first record was like, it felt like the ingredients were there. It was pretty, and this one, I think it all comes together in a way that really clicks. It's I don't know. People have said it's kind of emo. We'll talk more about emo soon. I don't know if I agree, but it's like very gentle, delicate guitar work that I guess I can see why people say that. But it's a really beautiful, I would say it's like kind of post rock, but does have vocals, but very beautiful album. Before we move on from indie, like you said, we have our list on the website, BrooklynVegan.com. And then Bill always does his best albums of the year so far for his column Indie Basement. So check that out too. And that includes some of the stuff we've talked about, as well as stuff like Destroyers, Dan's Boogie, Horse Girls, Phonetics, On and On, Dutch Interiors, Moneyball, those Pulp and Stereolab records.
Okay, moving on to punk and hardcore.
Well, I won't talk too much about what is my favorite album of the year, because we've talked about it on every episode so far, but that would be Turnstile's Never Enough. So we talked about that for like 30 minutes on the first episode of this show. So go check that out if you want to hear me talk about Turnstile's Never Enough. But if you like Turnstile's Never Enough and you want more hardcore, then there is plenty of that this year, including Speedway's A Life's Refrain, which is their really cool Swedish band. And their record was produced by Ned and Ben Russin from Title Fight, and Ned also sings on it. And there are also other cool guest vocal spots from members of Viagra Boys and Ikulu. Also Xiao's Control, Ursula's I Don't Like Anything, Iron Mind's Test of the Iron Mind, and Florida Man's Plastique. So no lack of good hardcore outside of the hardcore band getting the most attention in the entire genre this year.
For sure. And how about the emo realm?
Yeah, which is, kind of moving right along from punk hardcore to emo. A lot of good records this year. Let's see.
I mean, one we both love a lot, a band we've liked since the beginning and continue to love how they evolve, would be Anxious with Bambi.
Yeah, I think if there's one emo record that a lot of us agree on, I think it would be Anxious's Bambi. We collectively at BV have just been like super stoked about this band since their 29 EP Never Better, which was like, I mean, I think they were teenagers on that EP, and it was just like really, really good melodic hardcore that felt at least somewhat descended from stuff like Title Fight, I guess. And over the years since, they've just kind of like, they've been really influenced by a lot more like power pop and stuff, and like just other forms of pop music. I mean, anything from like the Beach Boys to Death Cab for Cutie to Fountains of Wayne. And I think Jimmy Eat World is a really good comparison for this new record. They mentioned them as an influence, and also even if they didn't, it kind of feels a little bit like the way Bleed American was this record by this emo band, but it was also just sort of like this great American rock record. And yeah, I think Bambi is like, it's that kind of thing. It just feels like a great, like they're really like, I'm putting Anxious as the best emo album of the year so far, I think. But they're like also kind of hard to classify because, and you, as we go on with this list, all this stuff is hard to classify. But it's like, I feel like they're almost emo in the original way of like, they are influenced by hardcore and by melodic music. And so by making a sort of more melodic version of hardcore, they've like happened upon emo. Whereas a lot of the other best emo records of this year so far would be bands that are like very clearly going for emo. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Outside of Anxious, I think if we were to pick like a solid 10 emo records from this year, I would have to say Anxious is Bambi, and then Weather Days Hornet Disaster, which is like this, I think it's like a double album by this like Swedish artist who's as much noise pop as they are emo, and it's a real trip. Arm's Length, There's a Whole World Out There, I think is awesome. It's their second record. It's not that different than their first, but it just feels like everything's been tightened up and there's a little more experimentation going on. Like there's a song with banjo. Arm's Length are not shy about who they're influenced by. I think the most obvious comparison is Home Like No Place Is There era Hotelier, and they just do a great job. And I think that record's 11 years old, and if you want that void in your life filled, Arm's Length fill it for me. So Charmer's Downpour is a real big one for me. Charmer have also kind of changed a bit over the years. They kind of started as more of a scrappy Midwest emo type thing. And this record, they kind of sound like they're doing like early 2000s Long Island emo, like kind of like Victory Records, Drive Through Records stuff. And they're doing it in a way that is not as cheesy as some of the stuff from that era. And it just feels like it's like they've taken the good and trimmed off the bad. And it just feels modern as well. But speaking of that era, would have to shout out LS Dune's Violet, the supergroup featured with vocals, lead vocalist Anthony Green of Circa Survive, Saosin, Sound of Animals Fighting, other bands, as well as members of My Chemical Romance, Thursday, and Coheed and Cambria. And this is a rare supergroup that doesn't just feel like they're resting on laurels. Like it feels just like a genuinely great current band with members who all happen to be in bands that were famous 20 years ago. And I think, Dave, you agree on this LS Dune's record.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
A much newer band, speaking of bands who are clearly going for emo, Tiny Voices, Reasons I Won't Change, so good. Like this is a band who are just like, they look to stuff as recent as Hot Mulligan, like is clearly an influence on them. And Chris Freeman from that band guest on this record. But yeah, they're like just, fifth wave emo through and through, going for emo, looking to emo bands. Great stuff. For Your Health, This Bitter Garden, I think is a very well worth the wait record that their debut album In Spite Of from 2021 was like really good in the sort of chaotic sasscore, mathcore kind of thing. And then they did like a way more melodic split EP with Awake But Still in Bed. And this record, they kind of bring it all together. There's melodic stuff. There's really screamy, chaotic stuff. Super, super good. This new EP that just came out that just blew me away on first listen and I cannot stop loving is this band My Point of View. That's Y-O-U, not V-I-E-W. I assume that's a double entendre or a pun, etc. There's from Denton, Texas. It's their first EP. It's called This Is My First Heist. And it's just like they have dual vocals that remind me of early Raina Maria, like the sort of clean guitar work that reminds me of fellow Texas legends or fellow Texas band, but legends of Texas, Mineral. And newer stuff too. Like they kind of fit in really well with stuff like Awake But Still in Bed and Your Arms Are My Cocoon. And it's really familiar style emo, but just feels fresh in a way. Record Setter also back with a great EP called Evoke Invoke. Their album I Owe You Nothing from 2020 was like one of my favorite screamo records in a while. Like sort of melodic screamo. Like it's screamo, but it's very much in the more sort of like Touche Amore, Pianos Become the Teeth kind of emo and melodic style. And they do it really well. And this new EP is great. And then if I had to pick a 10, that's tough. I would give, before I get there, I'd probably give, I'm going to say it's too soon to say I really love the new Moving Mountains record that we talked about last week. I love the new Sport record, this French band who are back with their first in 9 years. Moving Mountains also their first in 12 years. And this Mexico screamo band, Joliet, I really like. Those are all pretty recent. I don't know if they're, I'm going to say like those could all make the list in a couple weeks of more time spent. But I'm going to give this slot to First Day Back, who are named after a Braid song and they sound exactly like they're named after a Braid song. Like it's, they're not, I don't think they're trying too hard to be original. They're just doing 90s Midwest emo, which like the way it was done back then. And I think because it is just sort of so like intentional and also they're just so good at it and they're so just like they're just like, we love this music and we're just rocking. Like it brings you back to the early days of like Algernon Cadwallader and Snowing, I think, because that's what they were just like doing this cap and jazz and Braid type stuff because they love it and it wasn't really happening at the time. And now it does happen a lot more, but I think First Day Back they tap into that spirit of like the very early emo revival, as well as tapping into the actual 90s OG era. And a lot of people who talk about emo on the internet are hyping this record, and I see why. Yeah, so I guess that's the year in emo thus far.
Sounds good. Let's do pop.
Sure. My favorite pop album this year is definitely Lady Gaga's Mayhem.
If we're calling it pop, my favorite would be FKA Twigs.
I think that counts. I mean, yeah, it's like, I mean, she is on a major label, but FKA Twigs obviously is also in a way so much more indie and alternative than Lady Gaga. But I love that record too. Those would be probably my top two. The Gaga record is just like, I really think it's her best yet. Like, And also like, so this album comes 17 years after her debut. So I have to compare it to Madonna, someone Lady Gaga has obviously always followed in her footsteps. Madonna put out Ray of Light 16 years into her career. I was a child when Ray of Light came out. It was immediately on my radar. I didn't know it was by an artist who also released music in the early 1980s at the time. But it was just because it was so relevant to current pop music. Like I was like a 90s kid listening to Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears, and Madonna, you know, like at like her new record. And so now that I realize what that meant, I'm like, wow, like it's kind of amazing how relevant Madonna was in the late 90s. And I'm like, I feel like Gaga is doing that with Mayhem. It feels like such a relevant pop record right now. I think it's her best yet, also because it feels like the record that she wanted to make in 2008, 2010, 2012, like when she was doing the Fame, Born This Way era, like the kind of like, you know, like the very classic, like Bad Romance-y kind of Gaga. But it feels like she has way more control over her career now and her music and her output. I mean, that may or may not be true, but it feels that way. And this record just feels like Gaga taking, like in the director's seat, making that kind of album. So it's kind of like, it's what her fans like the most from her. And it just has, like, there's no compromises on it. I think there were some compromises made in the early Gaga days. And it, like, you know, if you are like, why is this podcast that also loves Greed, Death, and Great Grandpa really trying to sell me on Lady Gaga? Like, this album, I think there's clear references to stuff like New Order and Prince and Michael Jackson and Daft Punk and Nine Inch Nails. And it's just like, her taste is so amazing. And she brings that all into this just like danceable current pop record, and like and in a way that, and with a voice that nobody else in the world has. Like, I think it's brilliant.
It seems to be a theme. I guess it's not necessarily a new theme, but if, as mentioned, I do enjoy the Miley Cyrus album, which as well is full of all these indie rock collaborations, and Model Actress, who we named earlier, co-wrote a song, right?
Cole from Model Actress has some credit on the record. I don't know exactly what the contribution was, but yeah. And there's like the War on Drugs guy, Adam, plays guitar on 2 songs, and members of Always, they for sure co-wrote a song. So yeah, it's got some indie rock bona fides.
Not a new thing for Miley.
No, she had that Acid album with the Flaming Lips 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But this one, yeah, it feels like that one single, like, just kind of feels like it's Miley doing War on Drugs, and that's awesome. And Sean Everett was like the main producer, who is the War on Drugs main producer, and he did the Killers record that also sounds like the War on Drugs. So
you also love the Weeknd album.
I do. I did want to say, before we escape the topic of pop singers making cool nods to indie, we talked about Olivia Rodrigo doing that on this show recently. And since then, she brought out Robert Smith on stage.
It's true.
Yeah.
It would probably be a main topic today if it wasn't for this other related topic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was amazing.
But yeah, I love The Weeknd, who also, you know, fills his records with reference, like, you know, definitely has worked with Daft Punk. And I mean, he is clearly so obsessed with like 80s synth pop and like the darker, moodier side of 80s synth pop. And he brings that into, like, it's like Michael Jackson meets like New Order brought into the current pop whatever. And I the album's very long. He said it would be his final album as The Weeknd. He seems to have since walked that back, but it is the final album of a trilogy he'd been working on that also included After Hours and Dawn FM. And it feels very much like an end, and I feel like it deserves to be as long as it is. I know some people don't agree, which is why I'm harping on it. But it feels like, okay, like, you know, here's my last shot at this. Here's all the ideas I've got. And I think it's sequenced in a way where it's really rewarding, because it has like 5 songs that feel like they could be the last song. It's like a Paul McCartney encore kind of thing. Meanwhile, I also love the Bad Bunny record for pop. Probably remiss not to mention the Lord album, which is, it's been all Lord all the time lately. It's a return to form. I like Solar Power more, actually. I like Solar Power like probably more than any Lord record. But I know that people who like Lord more than me prefer that she's back to an album that kind of sounds more like melodrama. What else for you before we move on from pop?
I mean, I don't even have to call it a guilty pleasure because Pitchfork gave it like an 8, but Addison Rae, been listening to that a little.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything to be guilty about. I mean,
I know. Yeah. I'm still living in the past.
I mean, there's definitely like shades of Lana on that record, and obviously she is a Charlie XCX collaborator. Speaking of Lana,
the name of the
SZA's album Lana, late 2025 album, deserves a shout out. I think it's great. I am done harping on like why is this a deluxe album of SOS instead of its own album, but I do remain confused. But it's a great record. Where should we go next?
Rap.
My favorite rap album of the year is Billy Wood's Gollywog. Also, this is my second favorite album of the year in general, behind Turnstile.
Has there ever been a time when Billy Woods wasn't our favorite rap album and Turnstile wasn't our favorite punk album?
It's honestly, really good point to bring up. It's like, so I think we see a lot in hip hop, these artists who are so prolific. And I assume that does have something to do with you get 10, 15, 20 beats, rap over them, and you can release it. I assume it is a quicker process than if you have like a lot of instrumentalists.
What's your favorite Boldy James album from this year?
Oh, man.
Just kidding. Boldy James has released 9 projects this year so far. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, it's up to 10. I don't know.
I think there's one coming out next week.
There you go. But, put on any one of them and it's just good. But who can keep up?
It's also, though, just like, yeah, it's too much now. Like, we love you, Boldy James, but I can't listen to 9 albums in 6 months by you.
And you definitely can't review them.
No, I used to. I mean, I've reviewed many Boldy James records, and he's one of my favorite current rappers, but he's moving too fast for me, and I'm only human. But Billy Woods, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, shout out Billy Paris, who still manages to review every Guided by Voices album as they are released.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
But back to Billy Woods.
But Billy Woods is also really prolific. I mean, he usually has at least one album a year, including solo releases and Arm & Hammer, his duo with Elucid, who also usually has at least a record a year. And on paper, I should be overwhelmed by this, but in reality, it's like, I've been saying this for years, and so far it remains true. My favorite Billy Woods album is always his most recent. It's like, I always, whatever the newest one is the one I reach for the most and want to hear the most. And if because there is so many, like if that means that maybe I haven't put on, say, his 2022 record since 2022, like whatever, or whatever other example, that's like, okay, I think, because it's just like each time there's a new one, I want to spend so much time with it. And I do spend so much time with it. And so it's like, I don't like, I can't rank Billy Woods records because like, I don't know, but I always am obsessed with whatever the newest one is. And right now I'm like, this is one of the best Billy Woods albums yet. But I also always say that. So, but it just does feel like I think it's, how often do you see an artist where you feel that way about, where you're just like, I genuinely think the newest thing is the best. It's the one I want. Like I have never even come close to getting tired of him. If anything, I only like him more with each release. It feels somewhat rare. I don't know if you disagree or agree, but
I completely agree. Billy Woods has that special thing.
Yeah.
Who else do we have on our rap list?
I think this album isn't necessarily a rap album, although I do think that she's a rapper, but John Glacier's album, Like a Ribbon, is really big for me this year. I think it feels more like an electronic album that has rapping by a rapper. It's just, as opposed to feeling like traditional hip hop or something. I mean, whatever that means at this point, but take this with what you will. But it feels to me like an electronic record with rapping, but I'm obsessed with it.
Love that one too.
Yeah. Backwash, Only Dust Remains, so good. It's her first following a trilogy. It's spelled Back X Wash. the production and subject matter is sort of like a new era following this completed trilogy, and it's like a little bit less like noise industrial than the last 3 records. It feels a little bit more in like the kind of like chipmunk soul direction as far as the production goes, and the rapping and the lyricism is just among her most powerful yet. I love, if you like Billy Woods, you should definitely listen to Prem Rock's new album, Did You Enjoy Your Time Here? Prem Rock is on Billy Woods' label Backwoods. Billy is on the record. Back all of Backwoods Studio, it's just like this kind of like this collective of just like really great underground rap, and everything coming out of that label is fantastic. And the Prem Rock one really stands out to me as like my kind of second favorite to Billy Woods. Prem Rock is also part of a duo called Shrapnel, and they do great stuff too. Little Sims has a new album called Lotus. She's a UK rapper, one of the best doing it, has been for a while, still is. Aesop Rock, as far as like, I mean, if you like the stuff that Billy Woods is doing too, like I feel like Aesop Rock is a clear precedent to that, and they have collaborated. Woods is on this record, or Arm & Hammer might be on the record, like both of them. But I think it's so cool to see how Aesop Rock has kind of emerged as like this stylistic forebear to this like current underground rap movement in New York. And he continues to like, his last like 7 albums have been like great. Like he's been really on like a run lately. I assume you've noticed that.
Definitely.
And I love the Bruiser Wolf album, Potluck. Bruiser Wolf has a crazy voice, and
one of the best features. Anytime Bruiser Wolf pops up on another rap album, it's always a highlight.
He's on the Billy Woods album too.
There you go. Is there any album on this list that doesn't have one of the other rappers from this list also on it?
I think so.
Rhetoric, yeah. Kind of a joke. Little Sims.
But yeah, that's a pretty solid list. I would give quick shout outs to McKinley Dixon, Mike, who has 2 projects this year, Pink Sifu, Gais Guevara, and Overcast. I like those a lot.
And we mentioned Boldy James, but of course there are a handful of Griselda projects this year as well, not surprisingly.
Oh yeah, another not as prolific as nobody is prolific as Boldy James this year, but Griselda's always dropping as well. And also, I mean, then we're like Black Soprano Family, like related offshoot stuff too. But
yeah, I was upset Boldy James just played a New York City show on Friday. I was surprised Benny the Butcher from Griselda was opening for him. You know, I kind of thought they were on the same level, although I guess they're both so prolific and playing all the time. At some point, you're opening for each other. But they, I had to miss that show to go to the Prospect Park We Are the World thing. But
the conundrum of living in New York City, always something else you could be doing.
For real. Let's talk metal.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're more of the metalhead than me, especially this year. So why don't you go for it?
Well, that might be true, but there's still a clear winner in metal this year, which we both have very much agree on. A band you've been a fan of for a long time. I'm, of course, talking about Deaf Heaven. I don't know if true metalheads would agree, but Deaf Heaven continued to dominate. And this Lonely People with Power album from this year, it's just amazing and a step above.
Well, a classic me comment, but I don't care if true metalheads agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the ultimate Deaf Heaven record at this point. I think like Sunbather is always going to be the classic. I've also always kind of liked New Bermuda more than Sunbather. It was, when they did get all that hate from the metal community, and then they kind of responded with like, hey, we like can write Slayer riffs. I was like, Sunbather's awesome, and you did not need to do this album to prove your metal chops, but also I do kind of like it more. So, but then, they've since done like more shoegazy stuff, more post-rocky stuff, an entire album that was mainly clean vocals, all these different things. And it's like Sunbather is the classic, but it sort of no longer represents the scope of this band, whereas Lonely People with Power does. I think it's the only record thus far that touches on like every single thing Deaf Heaven has proven to be capable of. So like, I almost think if you're new to the band, I almost would be like, maybe start here and like then go backwards. I don't know. But like listen to this one first if you've never heard Deaf Heaven, and then go to Sunbather and then New Bermuda or Roads to Judah. I mean, they were, not to overlook their great early record, which was the one that got me into them. But yeah, ultimate Deaf Heaven.
So what you're saying is, like Madonna, Deaf Heaven continue to be relevant well after their...
Yes, but it's also way harder for pop stars. Like I was actually having a conversation with a friend at a party this past weekend about this. No style of music is as fickle as pop music, I think. Like, right? Like, I mean, I feel like in indie, we are just like, oh, a new Dinosaur Jr. record, great. Like, we love our heroes. But I feel like in pop, it's like you get a few years and then you're immediately like, you're in your flop era, like on to the next thing. Like, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So it's so impressive when you get a Lady Gaga or a Madonna who is making culturally dominant music over 15 years into their career. But yes, it is also very cool to see Deaf Heaven making one of their best albums over a decade after their breakthrough record. And again, to bring those metal purists up, I think Deaf Heaven versus metal purists, Deaf Heaven won. So what else? What else is in the metal world that we need to know about?
One that I've been listening to a lot, and I guess it's metal, but it's also shoegaze, what do you call doomgaze? The new Planning for Burial album. I haven't gotten the chance to spend a lot of time with it. This is also an artist who has a lot of releases through the years and has actually, dating back to probably at least 2009, we've been getting albums from Planning for Burial. But yeah, this new one, it's been a minute and it's really good. Enjoying that. Also, I shouted this out on a previous episode, but in the proggy death metal realm, which people associate with Blood Incantation, Horrendous, and Tomb Mold, who are, three of the top newer bands in that genre, the Ancient Death album, really still enjoying that. When I just want to tune out all thoughts, the Pissgrave album still does a great job on that. Just dirty, probably the most extreme album that, probably the most divisive album that might be mentioned on this episode, more divisive than Addison Rave and Pissgrave with Malignant, Worthlessness. The Great Old Ones, if for black metal, is one that I continue to love with their new album, Kadath. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And also really heavy Death Grind, the Caustic Wound album. Love that one. Haven't had really a chance to listen to it except for once, but the new Blood Monolith album, for another death metal album, is one I want to keep hearing a little more of. And I feel like we need to give a shout out to the Sumac and Moormother album, which, would you call that a metal album?
Yeah, it's metal among other things. I like this one a lot too. It's like Sumac, I guess, like, I think that they have been around long enough and are established enough to not need to be called a supergroup, like, because that can be backhanded. But it is, the singer is Aaron Turner from Isis, Old Man Gloom, etc. And then they also have the bass player is Brian Cook from Russian Circles and Botch, and the drummer is Nick from Baptists. And it's post metal like Isis, but also there's like a Sonic Youth Swans noise rock thing. And then Moormother, like totally undefinable, someone who covers everything from spoken word to jazz to hip hop to electronic music. She's also just like an activist in her lyrics. That's very clear. And it's like, on paper, do these two things sound good together? Like, I feel like it could be a little bit like, iffy, and then it's just like amazing. It works together perfectly. Like it's like a lock and key, the way that her music and their music comes together. And the lyrics, like every Moormother release, are like, again, it's like she's basically, her lyrics may as well double as like a protest rally speech, every time. And they are on this album that too. Very powerful.
Very powerful, very satisfying. Love that one. Also, Wake, we should mention, actually. Wake, spelled like Rwake, Rwake. A long-awaited return for that band.
Yeah, of the southern psychedelic sludge scene. I would say, actually, that, like, I mean, they definitely, like, have similarities to, like, Kylesa and stuff like that. But I would say, speaking as someone whose favorite metal album of the year is Deaf Heaven, if you're, like, really into Deaf Heaven and looking for like another metal record that like would scratch an itch, I would recommend this one. It might be a lot to go straight from Death Heaven to Piss Grave if you're not already immersed in the world of caustic death metal, but I think the Wake record would really be like a solid like Death Heaven fans looking to branch out. And I also like, I mean, it's 12 years now of talking about, you know, Death Heaven fans looking for more metal, but I don't know. Probably still happens.
No, for sure. And not a metal album, but from that same sludge metal world. I mean, first, let me back up and say one of the biggest things happening in metal for the past year has been the reunion of Acid Bath, who's been playing shows, selling out giant venues, and just based on the power of their albums from the early 90s. And we haven't had new music from Acid Bath, I think, since the mid 90s. But Dax Riggs returned this year, the frontman of Acid Bath, with a new album, which is not metal. It's more alternative rock. He does the like kind of bluesy singer-songwriter thing. But yeah, his new album also worth hearing. As is, you know, one of the biggest bummers was when Jonathan Holton left the band Tribulation, who is very much one of our favorite death metal bands in the past 10 years or so. And he also came out with a solo album this year now Tribulation also came out with an album. I think it was this year. But Jonathan came out with his own album. I also kind of enjoyed that.
And neither one of those albums are really metal.
No.
Jonathan's solo album or Tribulation's new album.
Very true.
They're like a goth rock band now.
Yes, definitely.
I guess another honorable mention for me would probably be the Church Tongue EP, which is their guitar player is also in Knocked Loose. And actually, George from Death Heaven is one of the guest vocalists on it, as well as guest vocalists from Twitching Tongues and Initiate. It's really, really cool metalcore. And it's also really cool to hear George. We were talking about this kind of because when he came on stage with Knocked Loose, but it's cool to hear George's like black metal shriek in a metalcore environment.
Definitely like that one too. And of course, there are many more metal albums I could give shout outs, but let's not make this all about metal. How about country?
Ending the episode right where we started.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Joshua Ray Walker's new album, Tropicana, which is quickly emerging as one of my favorite country albums of the year. Also, Turnpike Troubadour's new album, The Price of Admission. They came back last year with like their first since a hiatus. And I actually think this new one is better. I don't know how often that happens, that you come back from hiatus, release 2 albums in 2 years. And it's like, it was almost like, I loved the last one, but in hindsight, maybe like they had to get the rust off because this feels like the comeback to me at this point.
And Zach Bryan is definitely helping make that happen. I feel like I'm seeing Turnpike Troubadours get more attention than they've gotten in a long time, in part thanks to one of the biggest artists in the world giving them a lot of love.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of help pave the way for a lot of what is happening in country now. Like, I mean, even like someone like Jason Isbell, who also I'd have on my list probably with Foxes in the Snow, his acoustic solo record. But I think like Turnpike were kind of doing that, like I was saying earlier, this like not alt country, but like alternative friendly country. And Zach Bryan's probably the biggest artist in the world who makes country music that is also kind of like indie and alternative friendly. I mean, he literally collaborates with Bon Iver. He loves Joyce Manor. He had the Front Bottoms open for him. Like, he clearly is invested in that kind of music. And I think Turnpike were doing that in like the 2000s when that was sort of not a trend yet.
Definitely. I mean, Zach, by the way, also constantly shouting out Jason Isbell, who's also clearly an influence.
Yeah, I mean, there's that one song on Zach Bryan's album from last year. I think it's called 28, and it's just like Jason Isbell cosplay. Like, it's a great song, but it's like no ifs, ands, or buts about what he's doing on that one.
What other country records?
I like the new Charlie Crockett record, which is his first of at least 2 coming out this year. He's like the country Boldy James. Seriously, he like drops an insane amount. And this is actually his major label debut. And it being on a major does not seem to have changed anything about his approach, which is great. And Esther Rose's album, Want, I like a lot. I'm going to digress for a second, but like we kind of touched on earlier, and I think if you pay attention to indie rock, this is very known, but like so much what's happening in indie right now is also very country inspired. I mean, I definitely think like Wednesday, Waxahachie, and MJ Lenderman leading the way. And Esther Rose her new album is almost the inverse of something like Waxahachie or Wednesday, where like she was kind of started more in country, and this album feels like it's going more towards indie rock. And I think that it ends up reminding me of like, I think I called it in my review a cross between MJ Lenderman and Hop Along. So it's actually like very much an indie rock record, although her roots are like in like the country scene. Haley Witter's Corn Queen keeps sticking with me. I like her a lot. I have compared her more than once to like the more country era of Casey Musgraves, and I think this new one is that also. Patterson Hood's new record, Exploding Trees and Airplane Screams. Also, again, like this one features, I think Waxahachie and Carly from Wednesday are both on it. So it's like he is in Drive By Truckers, which Jason Isbell used to be in. Drive By Truckers are constantly name dropped as an influence on Wednesday and MJ Lenderman and that kind of stuff. So I feel like he's capitalizing on the moment a bit. Not saying he's doing it for the money or anything, but he's recognizing his influence and working with the new artists he's influenced by. And personally, as a fan of music, I love seeing stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, talking about country, we could also mention the Flory record, Home Is Where, who were an emo band who now have an alt country record. Dutch Interior, I know our coworker Bill is probably the biggest fan on staff of this record, but I think it's right in that same ballpark as the kind of indie country stuff. So it's
caught them at South by Southwest as well. Great live.
Nice. Yeah, I have not seen them yet. I would love to though.
I also caught this year Caliphone at Baby's All Right. I was like surprised to see that, but yeah, another new Caliphone album out this year. Like Drive By Truckers, they are an influential band in this style.
Yeah, and Bonnie Prince Billy, who has released like his most country album in a long time with The Purple Bird. And I mean, you can't talk about indie country without talking about Bonnie Prince Billy.
All right, enough about our favorite albums of the year so far. For more, definitely go check out our full list on BrooklynVegan.com. Again, that represents our full team and how we narrowed it down. And let's talk a few anticipated albums, though, before we go. Speaking of indie country, I feel like you may have a few.
Yeah, that's definitely that's one of my favorite sort of things happening in music right now. So alongside the previously discussed records like Flory and Dutch Interior and Home Is Where, I've got three that I think fit that category that I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of this year. Wednesday's Bleeds, Greg Freeman's Burn Over, and Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band's New Threats from the Soul. And then let's do 5 albums that we're looking forward to each. I'll do 2 more. Pool Kids, Easier Said Than Done, and Clips, Let God Sort 'Em Out, which is the first album in over 15 years from Clips, aka Pusha T and No Malice. Is entirely produced by Pharrell, whose Neptunes produced all the classic Clips records. Kendrick Lamar, Nas, Stove God Cooks, Tyler the Creator are on the album. I'm really stoked for it. What about you, Dave? 5 records that you can't wait to hear?
I, of course, do want to hear all 5 that you mentioned as well, but I'm going to go, I'll give a hardcore one. End It is hopefully going to be one of the biggest hardcore albums of the year that's coming on Flat Spot, called Wrong Side of Heaven. Let's say for indie rock, Liquid Mike has a new album coming out. I feel like the momentum has been building on Liquid Mike, and also in that 90s rock category there, Liquid Mike. So they have released an album every year for the past few years, but let's see if this one brings them over the edge a little bit. Also, you might call it indie rock, but also post-punk jazz for fans of Idols, but also jazz and that Black Midi Squid UK scene. We have Maruja, they've had a few amazing EPs. They just released a jazz EP this year, and it'll be their debut full length Pain 2 Power coming soon. I'll end it with 2 metal albums. First, Black Braid, who are releasing Black Braid 3. Black metal band, Black Braid 1 and Black Braid 2. Both great, amazing, intense, full of riffs albums. Excited to hear 3. And Innumerable Forms, death metal band full of members of lots of other bands we love, from both metal and hardcore scenes. And can't wait to hear that new Innumerable Forms.
Nice. I'm excited to hear all 5 of those as well. And I'd also add that Liquid Mike, also 2 members in the band are in that band Charmer, who I mentioned earlier as one of my favorite emo records of the year. So
for our full list of anticipated albums, we also have that up on BrooklynVegan.com now. We named 10. How many are in our list?
58.
58. So go check out BrooklynVegan.com, and hope everyone has a good 4th of July weekend.
Yeah. See you next week. Thanks so much for tuning into BV Weekly. If you like what you heard, like the episode, subscribe, give us a good rating, tell your friend about us. All those little things go a really long way. We really appreciate it. Dave and I will be back every Friday morning with updates on news, albums, songs, and more. And thanks so much to Joe D'Agostino from Cymbals Z Guitars and Empty Country for the great theme song, our co-producer Kevin Duffel, our mix engineer Nick Gray. See you next week.